Imagine a city turned into a battlefield, where every building, every street, and every corner holds the echoes of relentless warfare, a place where the fate of millions and the course of World War II would be decided. Welcome to Stalingrad, the site of one of history's most brutal and pivotal battles. In the early hours of June 22, 1941, Adolf Hitler launched Operation Barbarossa, the largest military invasion in history. 3 million German soldiers, along with hundreds of thousands of Axis allies, crossed into Soviet territory, igniting a conflict that would become the Eastern Front of World War II. Hitler's ambition for Lebensraum, or living space, drove this audacious plan. He envisioned vast German colonies stretching deep into the Soviet Union, with the Slavic populations subjugated or eliminated to make way for German settlers. The early stages of Operation Barbarossa were marked by stunning German successes. Utilizing blitzkrieg tactics, the Wehrmacht swiftly overran Soviet defenses, capturing vast territories and encircling entire Soviet armies. Cities fell one by one: Minsk, Smolensk, and Kiev. By the end of 1941, German forces had advanced to the gates of Moscow. However, the brutal Russian winter and fierce Soviet resistance halted the German advance, setting the stage for a protracted and bloody conflict. Despite these setbacks, Hitler remained determined to achieve a decisive victory in the east. He turned his attention to the southern front, eyeing the rich oil fields of the Caucasus and the industrial city of Stalingrad. The capture of Stalingrad would sever Soviet supply lines, deliver a significant psychological blow, and secure the flanks of the German advance into the Caucasus. Thus, the stage was set for one of the most pivotal battles of World War II, the importance of Stalingrad. Stalingrad, named after Soviet leader Joseph Stalin, was more than just a city. Located on the western bank of the Volga River, it was a major industrial hub, producing tanks, artillery, and other war material crucial to the Soviet war effort. The city's strategic location also made it a vital transportation hub, linking the European part of the Soviet Union with the Caucasus and Central Asia. For Hitler, capturing Stalingrad was both a strategic and symbolic objective. Strategically, it would disrupt Soviet logistics and cut off vital supply routes. It would also protect the northern flank of the German advance into the Caucasus, where rich oil fields awaited. Symbolically, the fall of a city bearing Stalin's name would be a propaganda coup, demonstrating the superiority of the Nazi regime and demoralizing Soviet forces and civilians. Stalingrad's significance was not lost on the Soviet leadership. Stalin issued Order No. 227, famously stating, "Not a step back." This order underscored the importance of holding the city at all costs. The stage was set for a brutal showdown, as both sides prepared for a battle that would determine the fate of the Eastern Front. The German onslaught. In the summer of 1942, the German Sixth Army, commanded by General Friedrich Paulus, launched its assault on Stalingrad. The offensive began with a devastating aerial bombardment by the Luftwaffe, which reduced much of the city to rubble. The relentless bombing campaign aimed to demoralize the Soviet defenders and pave the way for a swift German advance. As German forces pushed into Stalingrad, they encountered fierce resistance from the Red Army. The initial stages of the battle saw brutal urban warfare, with soldiers fighting for control of key buildings and streets. The city's factories, apartment blocks, and even sewers became battlegrounds as both sides engaged in close-quarters combat. The Germans quickly learned that the ruins of Stalingrad were ideal for defensive fighting, turning every street and building into a deadly obstacle. Despite their early successes, the German advance slowed as they faced determined Soviet resistance. The Red Army, bolstered by fresh reinforcements, fought tenaciously to hold the city. The battle became a war of attrition, with both sides suffering heavy casualties. The German Sixth Army, initially confident of a quick victory, found itself bogged down in a brutal and exhausting struggle. Soviet resistance stiffens. As the German assault intensified, Soviet resistance in Stalingrad grew increasingly resolute. General Vasily Chuikov, commander of the 62nd Army, played a crucial role in organizing the city's defense. Chuikov implemented a strategy of hugging the enemy, keeping his forces as close to the Germans as possible to neutralize their advantage in air and artillery support. This tactic forced the Germans into deadly close-quarters battles, where the Soviets could exploit their familiarity with the urban terrain. Chuikov's leadership and the determination of his troops were pivotal in holding key positions within the city. The Soviets transformed the ruins of Stalingrad into a labyrinth of strong points and defensive positions. Snipers, such as the legendary Vasily Zaitsev, wreaked havoc on German forces, picking off officers and disrupting their advance. The industrial areas of the city, including the Red October factory and the tractor factory, became fortresses where every inch was fiercely contested. Despite suffering heavy casualties and enduring constant bombardment, the Soviet defenders maintained their resolve. The city's civilian population also played a crucial role, supporting the military effort by constructing fortifications and providing logistical support. The struggle for Stalingrad became a symbol of Soviet resilience and determination as the defenders held their ground against overwhelming odds. The early attempts to hold the city were marked by extraordinary acts of bravery and sacrifice. Soviet soldiers fought with a tenacity fueled by the knowledge that the fate of their country depended on their success. Stalingrad became a focal point of national pride and resistance, galvanizing the Soviet population and the military. House-to-house combat. The Battle of Stalingrad descended into a nightmare of urban warfare, unlike anything seen before. The city, reduced to rubble by relentless bombing, became a labyrinth of shattered buildings, twisted metal, and crumbling streets. This environment turned Stalingrad into a meat grinder, where soldiers fought tooth and nail for every inch of territory. House-to-house combat was the order of the day. Soviet and German forces engaged in brutal close-quarters battles, often within the same buildings. Every room, hallway, and stairwell could become a deadly ambush site. Soldiers used whatever weapons were available, from rifles and grenades to bayonets and even makeshift clubs. The fighting was intense and personal, with opponents sometimes only a few feet apart. Snipers played a crucial role in this urban warfare. Soviet snipers, like the famed Vasily Zaitsev, took advantage of the ruined landscape to hide and pick off German soldiers with deadly precision. Zaitsev's exploits became legendary, inspiring his comrades and demoralizing the enemy. The Germans too deployed snipers to counter the Soviet sharpshooters, leading to tense duels across the war-torn city. The factories of Stalingrad became focal points of the fighting. The Red October factory, the Barricade gun factory, and the tractor factory were transformed into fortresses, with each building fiercely defended by Soviet troops. These industrial complexes saw some of the fiercest battles of the war, with both sides pouring in reinforcements and resources to gain control. Pavlov's house and Mamayev Kurgan. Among the many epic tales of heroism in Stalingrad, few are as iconic as the defense of Pavlov's house. Named after Sergeant Yakov Pavlov, this four-story apartment building was fortified and defended by a small group of Soviet soldiers. For 58 days, they held off continuous German assaults, turning the building into a symbol of Soviet tenacity. The defenders created a fortress out of the rubble, with interconnected rooms, trenches, and machine gun nests. Despite being cut off and surrounded, they managed to hold their ground, inflicting heavy casualties on the Germans. Mamayev Kurgan, a strategic hill overlooking the city, became another focal point of the battle. Control of the hill was crucial for artillery observation and command. The fighting for Mamayev Kurgan was intense, with both sides suffering heavy casualties. The hill changed hands several times, becoming a charnel house of bodies and broken equipment. Its eventual capture by the Soviets was a significant victory, giving them a vantage point over the city. The Volga lifeline. The Volga River played a crucial role in the Battle of Stalingrad. It served as a vital supply route for the Soviet defenders, allowing them to ferry in reinforcements, ammunition, and supplies. The river crossings were perilous, as German artillery and aircraft constantly targeted the boats and barges. Despite the dangers, the supply line across the Volga remained open, sustaining the Soviet resistance. The Soviet forces utilized makeshift ferries, rafts, and even swimming to transport men and material across the river. The bravery and determination of the supply crews were instrumental in keeping the defenders supplied and reinforced. Many soldiers crossed the Volga under heavy fire, knowing that they were heading into a deadly battle, but also knowing that their presence was crucial for holding the city. The Volga also served as an evacuation route for the wounded. Medical boats transported injured soldiers to safety, often under the same deadly conditions. The river was a lifeline, a conduit of hope and resilience amidst the carnage of Stalingrad. The winter turns. As the brutal Russian winter set in, the conditions for both sides became even more desperate. The temperatures plummeted, and the battlefield was blanketed in snow and ice. For the Germans, the winter was particularly harsh. Many soldiers were ill-equipped for the freezing conditions, lacking adequate clothing and supplies. Frostbite, illness, and hunger took a heavy toll on the German troops. The winter weather immobilized equipment, turning vehicles into frozen hulks and making resupply efforts even more challenging. The Germans, who had initially expected a quick victory, found themselves trapped in a hostile and freezing environment. For the Soviet defenders, the winter brought its own challenges, but they were better prepared and acclimatized to the harsh conditions. The Soviet supply lines, though strained, managed to keep the defenders equipped with winter clothing and provisions. The harsh weather also played to the Soviets' advantage, as it hampered German operations and provided a respite from the relentless assaults. The impact of the winter on the Battle of Stalingrad cannot be overstated. It compounded the suffering and attrition, turning the already brutal conflict into a frozen hell. The soldiers on both sides endured unimaginable hardships, fighting not only their enemy, but also the relentless elements. The stage was set for a pivotal shift in the battle, as the Soviets prepared to launch a counter-offensive that would change the course of the war. Operation Uranus. In the face of the grueling struggle at Stalingrad, the Soviet High Command, known as the Stavka, devised a bold plan to turn the tide. Named Operation Uranus, this counter-offensive aimed to encircle and crush the German Sixth Army and its supporting forces. The plan involved a massive pincer movement, with Soviet forces attacking from the north and south of Stalingrad to encircle the German troops. The operation commenced on November 19, 1942. Soviet forces, consisting of over 1 million soldiers and thousands of tanks and artillery pieces, launched a ferocious assault against the Romanian and Italian units guarding the German flanks. These Axis units were ill-equipped and underprepared to withstand the Soviet onslaught. The Soviet breakthrough was rapid and decisive, with the northern and southern pincers advancing quickly towards each other. By November 23rd, the two Soviet pincers met at the town of Kalach, west of Stalingrad, completing the encirclement and trapping approximately 300,000 German and Axis troops within a vast pocket known as the Kessel. The German Sixth Army, along with elements of the 4th Panzer Army, found themselves surrounded and cut off from reinforcements and supplies. The Kessel. Trapped within the Kessel, the German Sixth Army faced a dire and increasingly desperate situation. Supplies of food, ammunition, and medical supplies dwindled rapidly. The harsh winter conditions exacerbated the suffering, with soldiers enduring freezing temperatures, hunger, and disease. The Luftwaffe attempted to supply the encircled troops by air, but the effort was insufficient. The airlift was hampered by Soviet anti-aircraft fire, poor weather, and the sheer scale of the needs of the trapped army. Desperation set in among the German soldiers as their situation grew more untenable. Field Marshal Friedrich Paulus, promoted in the hopes that he would fight to the death, faced the grim reality of his encircled forces. The German High Command, including Hitler himself, refused to authorize a breakout attempt, insisting that the Sixth Army hold their positions. Several attempts to break through the Soviet encirclement and relieve the Sixth Army, such as Operation Winterstorm led by Field Marshal Erich von Manstein, ultimately failed due to fierce Soviet resistance and logistical challenges. Conditions within the Kessel continued to deteriorate. Soldiers suffered from severe frostbite, malnutrition, and combat fatigue. The lack of medical supplies meant that many wounded died from infections or exposure. The psychological toll was immense, as hope of relief dwindled, and the grim reality of their predicament set in. The surrender. By late January 1943, the situation for the German Sixth Army had become hopeless. Encircled, starving, and facing relentless Soviet attacks, the remnants of the Sixth Army were in no condition to continue fighting. On January 31, 1943, General Paulus, who had been promoted to Field Marshal just days earlier, in an attempt to ensure his loyalty, made the fateful decision to surrender. Hitler had expected Paulus to commit suicide rather than be captured, as no German field marshal had ever been taken alive. However, Paulus chose to surrender, recognizing the futility of further resistance. The surrender marked the end of the Battle of Stalingrad, with the remaining German forces surrendering on February 2nd. The capture of the Sixth Army was a devastating blow to Nazi Germany. Approximately 91,000 German soldiers were taken prisoner, including 24 generals. Many of these prisoners would never return home, perishing in Soviet captivity due to harsh conditions and inadequate provisions. The aftermath and legacy. The Battle of Stalingrad was one of the bloodiest conflicts in history, with estimates of total casualties exceeding 2 million. The Soviet Union suffered immense losses, with hundreds of thousands of soldiers and civilians killed or wounded. Despite the staggering cost, the Soviet victory at Stalingrad marked a turning point on the Eastern Front. The defeat at Stalingrad shattered the myth of Nazi invincibility and boosted Allied morale. It marked the beginning of a relentless Soviet advance that would eventually lead to the fall of Berlin in 1945. The battle also highlighted the extreme resilience and determination of the Soviet people and military. Stalingrad became a symbol of Soviet resistance and sacrifice, inspiring further efforts to repel the German invasion. Stalingrad's legacy endures as a symbol of resistance, resilience, and the devastating cost of war. The city's name was later changed to Volgograd, but the memory of the battle remains deeply ingrained in Russian history and consciousness. Memorials and monuments, such as the towering Motherland Call statue on Mamayev Kurgan, stand as reminders of the immense sacrifices made during the battle. The impact of the Battle of Stalingrad extended beyond the Eastern Front. It influenced strategic decisions and planning for the remainder of the war. The Allied powers recognized the importance of the Soviet Union's role in defeating Nazi Germany and provided increased support through initiatives like the Lend-Lease program. The battle also demonstrated the effectiveness of coordinated military strategy and the importance of holding and defending key positions. Stalingrad's legacy continues to be studied and remembered as a critical moment in World War II. The battle's lessons on urban warfare, strategic planning, and the resilience of defenders are still relevant in modern military and historical contexts. The sacrifices made by the soldiers and civilians at Stalingrad serve as a poignant reminder of the human cost of war and the enduring impact of courage and determination. The Battle of Stalingrad was a monumental struggle that changed the course of World War II. It was a testament to the resilience and determination of the Soviet people, who endured unimaginable hardships to defend their homeland. The battle's legacy continues to remind us of the human capacity for endurance and the profound impact of war on individuals and nations. Thank you for joining us on this journey through the history of the Battle of Stalingrad. If you found this video informative and engaging, please like, share, and subscribe for more content on pivotal moments in history. Let's continue to honor the memory of those who fought and learn from the past to build a better future.